So let's go first, straight to London, where we're joined by I24 News European correspondent Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, good morning to you. I think maybe one of the painful things yesterday, maybe that's not the right word to use given the war that was in 2003, was actually to watch Tony Blair give this very long speech on stage after the Chilcot report came out. A very damning report for Mr. Blair, a very damning report for his administration in 2003. That said, will this affect his future, whatever his future international affairs career might be, and what are we expecting next in that respect?
Brand Tony Blair has certainly been damaged by the Chilcot report, and you could see how seriously Mr. Blair took this from the response he made, that 2-hour press conference where he spoke at length and then took every single question in the room before he stood down from the podium. He was very clear that given the same information, he would do the same thing again if he could turn back the clock. And that was an extraordinary response to what the Chilcot report had said. In more than 7 years since it was set up, 13 years since the actual commitment of the UK troops to the war in Iraq, and 2.6 million words later, ultimately, Tony Blair said he stood by that tough decision he made as Prime Minister. And he said that Prime Ministers are the people that have to make those decisions and have to make those decisions in those very tough times. So despite everything that Chilcot has said, and despite the fact that he said he looked the families and the nation in the eye and says that he would do it again, there is some apology on his part, but not the kind of apology that some of the families of the British troops who died had hoped for.
The 179 British troops who died, not to mention the scores and thousands, hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians who died. Reactions, though, Jonathan, the current day political chaos that is going on in the UK, no other way to describe it. Can people make the connection between that war at the time to possibly what is going on right now in Europe as a direct result of the situation in the Middle East?
In a way, this was a break from the current news cycle in the UK, the chaos that Britain might be seen to be in at the moment, what with the Brexit result from the referendum and the leadership contest of the Conservative Party and the meltdown in the Labour Party as well. That has been put on pause for a day or two in the news as people absorb this vast report and discuss the news from all that time ago, 13 years ago. However, it is undoubted that the Iraq war has had an effect on British foreign policy since then. And yesterday people were speaking again of Britain's lack of military intervention, lack of support for Barack Obama's plans in Syria, and how the Iraq war had in many ways left a shadow over the British plans for military intervention at other times in the Middle East. And Blair and others pointed out that what has happened since then in Syria may be as a result of not intervening. And so it's not as simple as saying that intervention in Iraq caused this civil war there, and thus intervention is a bad thing, because what has happened in Syria through lack of intervention has caused in some ways a similar outcome.
A similar outcome, then, to say the least. Jonathan Sacerdoti joining us from London. Thank you for being with us this morning.